Hi, this is János, and let's continue our exploration of classic sensor versus modern sensor comparison. And today I will be looking at specifically what are those parameters. So when would the Canon 5D Classic would be equal or even preferable to using a Leica M11? And I think this sounds kind of outrageous because everyone assumes that the Leica M11 is just so much more advanced camera that an ancient primitive camera such as a 5D Classic cannot compete with it under any circumstances. However, looking at the sensor measurements, this is the DxOMark website that I'm using to get that data and compare the measurements of the sensor of the camera between the 5D Classic and the M11. I was extremely surprised to find certain working ranges of the sensor where the 5D Classic actually surpasses the Leica M11 in some qualities, in actually signal to noise captured by the sensor. So in effect, in the range where the 5D Classic's camera works and is designed to work at, the sensor of the 5D Classic has higher signal to noise ratio for every pixel compared to the pixels of the Leica M11's sensor. Now, I think this sounds a little bit outlandish. However, during the previous two sessions, I've shown these graphs, which is the full signal to noise measurements of DxOMark, and is shown for each of the ISO setting. And what I did is that I read out the highest and the lowest ISO measurements of both cameras. I mean, the highest and lowest of the 5D Classic. Why of that? Because that's the Leica goes both lower and higher in the ISO. So when you click here, you see this is the lower, it has a 64 ISO setting, and also higher, it's 3200, which is the highest for the 5D Classic, but it goes even down to 50,000. So this range is not present for the 5D Classic. That's why I could not compare it between the two. And also the ISO 64 setting is not present in the 5D Classic, so I couldn't compare that either. And of course, if you are going to use your camera at those ISO settings because you have to, those are the most optimal for the photos you are taking. For example, ISO 64, if you are at very strong sunlight and in parts of the world which are really sunny, let's say you are in Rio de Janeiro, or you are in Hawaii, for example, and it's noon and it's just bright everywhere, then yes, you want to use the ISO 64, and it will give you superior results, superior signal to noise per pixel with the Leica M11 than the photos you would take at ISO 100 with the Canon 5D Classic. Yes, so what we see, if we push it to the extreme, the M11 sensor will offer benefits for the signal to noise, so the actual pixel information content, because there is a difference between how many bits per pixel you are reading and what is the information you are reading, because some of those bits is noise, is the signal, is the noise of the camera that happens. So if you just take a picture which is supposed to be perfect black, it's not perfect black, it has noise, low level noise with that. And actually the noise is, when we look at ISO 64, the noise is extremely low with the Leica sensor. It's vanishing. It's 0.01% at the sorry. So here I'm looking at it wrong way. I'm just talking without thinking. So we have, when it's ISO 64, we have, what is that, 44.7 dB difference between noise and signal. But when you drop to zero light, at this point, when we hit zero, it becomes 100% noise, which is present in the data that is captured by the sensor. So that's what this graph means. So there is no data here when we hit ground zero, and basically it means that you have useless bits. So in other words, that whatever bits, so probably at the lowest bits you will be seeing ones, not just zeros, but they will not contain any information that's coming from your picture. It will be all noise content. And so apart from that, what we see in these two figures when we compare them is that here when we go below 1% grayscale, which means that we have hardly any light. At this point on, the Canon 5D Classic sensor starts to lose sensitivity, and then at 0.1% it doesn't work at the highest ISO setting. But for the Leica, at the highest ISO setting, we still have a ton of information at 0.1%, and it loses by all capacity to record when we reach 0.01%. So here we see that the low light capability of the modern sensor is an order, actually more than an order of magnitude stronger, because here we have at 0.1 it drops almost to zero, and but it's really strong there. And so yeah, it's about an order of magnitude more sensitive in the low light. And in other words, what does it mean is that you cannot rescue the blacks, you cannot rescue the shadows on a 5D Classic, because there is no information at the 0.1% range. So what we are seeing in a photo that we take, it's like a 1% to 100% range. And when you need to rescue something from the nearly invisible darkness, that's the 0.1% to 1%. And as you see here for the Canon, there's not much. At the 0.1%, it's just 6 dB. It means that it's two bits of information that we can rescue from the shadows, and that's not much. That's next to nothing. So for the Leica, you see at 0.1%, we have 15 bits of 15 dB signal. It means 5 bits of information. That's a hell lot more, pardon my words. So it means we have 32 shades to work with at this level, and for the Canon 5D we have 4 shades, so 4 versus 32. So there's a whole lot more information in those really dark regions that we can rescue with the Leica. So the Leica's modern technology, which is like almost 2 decades development over the 5D Classic, has shown its strength to be able to resolve these extremely low regions. However, that will come to your rescue when you fudge up your photo. So when you take it and I wanted to see the darks, but I overexposed, and I don't see the dark. So let's just dig in, and then you can rescue. in that case the M11 has way more data in those dark regions, and you can rescue your picture, and you will have more information that the camera captured per pixel to work with. However, if you capture it perfectly, let's say I will give you a simple example. This photo that you see here, I captured it with my 5D Classic, and here everything that you see is within 2% grayscale to 98% grayscale. And if you capture photos like that, where you don't need any kind of gymnastics and acrobatics from the camera, but you just have all your settings right, exposure right, click, you click the shutter, and there you get the photo. And in this case, if I were to take the exact same shot with the Leica M11, this 5D Classic shot has more signal in the file than the M11's does per pixel. Of course, for the M11 you have more pixels, so that gives you additional freedom compared to the 5D sensor. So if you want to print it out in a mural size, then of course the Leicas will be advantageous for you. But if you just want to have a look at it on your screen, and you don't have some really crazy ultra high definition 8K wall size screen for you, you just have like an average or something like way above average, but not something outlandishly, exceptionally, outrageously high-tech, then in those cases the 5D Classics shot will contain more information in this range that our eyes are comfortable with. So this is kind of like a comparison between a vacuum tube amplifier and a solid state amplifier, vacuum tube amplifier being the Canon 5D Classic. Is that the vacuum tube amplifiers, when they reproduce sounds, they do a better job at reproducing the mid-range than reproducing extreme lows or actually high frequencies. They still are capable to reproduce much better within the human hearing, because the solid state technology has artifacts in the high frequencies, and although the majority of the people of us they don't hear those high frequencies, so there's the false assumption that the tube amplifiers are only better in the mid-range, and the solid states are better at the frequency extremes. And part of that myth is also fueled that for a tube amplifier to show its strength requires a very good output transformer, and if you have a highly compromised output transformer, which most tube amplifiers on the market have, they do not have a good high frequency extension in that case. However, when you are comparing that price range of tube amplifiers where you have these compromised products to that price range of solid state amplifiers, the solid state amplifiers have even more compromised high frequencies, but the majority of people will not hear it, because most people don't hear, or just can hear extremely little beyond 17 kilohertz by the time we are adults. And so that's about it. And talking about the Canon 5D Classic, the sensor has extremely similar behavior. So up to the highest range of the frequency, let's just see it. I will show it. So what I did here is that those curves that we seen before, I simplified them and I read the data from the extremes of those curves and just plotted them for you here. There you go. This is the digest in a table. So I took the ISO 100 settings and the ISO 3200 settings for the 5D M11, 5D M11, and went to those colors like 98% gray. Actually, I could have gone 100% gray, but then it would have been the same result. But I did 98 anyway, and also 2% as the lowest point, because like here in this average picture, I think we don't even go as low as 2%. It's maybe like 5%. So anyway, this table relates to much more dynamic capability than what we have here in this photograph, but not as much as you would like in an extreme, like a broad daylight shot, like with the sun in the screen and the darkest shadows in the same photograph. There we drop to way below 2% value, and there the M11 would capture the whole range better. But even within that range, the between 2 and 98%, the 5D Classic has better information in it. So if you don't want to crush and do gymnastics on it, then you would still do better with the 5D, provided that you can capture all that you can. But usually for that situation, if you want to capture like a broad daylight, sun in the screen, shadow, then this range between 100% and 2% is not sufficient to capture that. So you will be limited to choose a range within that shot. But if you have like an average shot between 2% and 98%, you see that at 2%, when there's less light in the shadows, we have less information, so there's lower signal to noise content per pixel information. So it's just below 30 dB for the 5D Classics, the information content we have, and the M11 is 0.6 dB less. And even though you would say, oh, but the M11 has like 14 bits per pixel per color for raw data, and the 5D Classic has only 12 bits. Yeah, but it's using a lot of its 12 bits, and most of that is signal and very little noise, versus the M11's 14 bits, where there is much more noise. So those lowest 2 bits will be pure noise and useless, contain no information when at ISO 100 setting and this much amount of light hitting the sensor. And actually at the highest setting we also have a 0.4 dB difference. But let me just scroll down, because I did a difference between the two, so where I just show the dB difference between 5D versus M11, and to my extreme surprise, the 5D has more information in all of the circumstances. So highest ISO that the 5D can handle, lowest ISO that the 5D can handle, the low light, low contrast situation, high light, high contrast situation, and mid light, mid contrast situation. All of them, the 5D sensor per pixel captures more information than the Leica M11 sensor. This is just absolute bonkers, I think. And it doesn't mean that now you have to throw away your Leica and start taking shots with the 5D, because the Leica has a lot more pixels, and when you have a lot more pixels, you can do gymnastics with it, and you can have a lot more flexibility to do editing. So even with these values, even though a single pixel has more information, but it has so many more pixels that it will add up as a tremendous advantage over the 5D Classic when you are doing image processing and when you need to crop into the image, and then the Leica will blow the 5D Classic out of the waters. But if you don't do any processing, you don't have an ultra high resolution screen, you don't want to blow it up to a mural size, you just, like myself, you are looking at your photo that you took on your computer screen, even if it's a really nice screen, then the 5D Classic will give you more information versus noise than the shot taken by a Leica M11. And something that I didn't expect at all is that in the lowest ISO setting, which is 3200, it still is better than the Leica, and actually a lot better, twice as good in the mid-range than the 5D Classic. I mean, the advantage, like the plus 3D is one bit more information in the mid-range of the information that you are getting. What is the mid-range? It's the majority. Most of the pixels here correspond to that region around the 20% gray area, and where I think I lost somewhere. Maybe I have closed my no, I did not, but it's hidden somewhere and it wouldn't pop up. Anyway, we have lost it for practical purposes, but for most of the pixels the 5D Classic sensor has one bit more useful information than the Leica's images have per pixel. I think this is just absolute unimaginable and bonkers, but there's the data. The DxOMark measured it, published it, and that's it. I'm just reading it out and spelling it out for you. What's that full signal to noise ratio tells, and I find this just tremendously fascinating, and I think it's the basis why people are saying that the 5D Classic is an astonishing camera. It's so much more film-like, and it's like a film camera in a digital version. And yes, and the reason for that is not just like a nostalgia or a similarity to film camera, but it's really, the numbers say that it has more signal in the meat of the picture, in the mid-range of the contrast, in the middle of the contrast and saturation range than a modern sensor has in each of its pixels. So that's why there's a reason to use the 5D Classic. Just if you go purely for image quality, like how much of how, and what I noticed this, how this translates in real life. Unfortunately, I do not have a Leica M11, so I could not compare it to the Leica M11. I have a mirrorless camera, which is actually a very basic mirrorless. It's the Canon M50 Mark II. And when I compare the two photos, then what I notice is that the M50, it has the advantage of that higher resolution, and also there's this extra thing that the modern sensors do, is that there's image processing added with extreme amount of extra sharpening. And when the camera does automatic lens corrections, that also adds a brutal amount of sharpening to the photos. So much so that when I compared the lens correction, vignetting correction on, and compare the shots taken with the M50 to the 5D Classic, I almost vomited by looking at the modern camera shots. And the reason for that is that when I zoomed out, and it was taken at ISO 100, it looked okay. And when we remember here, looking at the ISO 100 figures, there we have tremendous signal to noise ratio, and DxO Mark does not have this published for the M50 Mark II. I cannot show it, so all I can see show now is the Leicas, and because of that lot of signal to noise ratio, there's tremendous amount of information stored in the image. Maybe not as much as in the 5D's pixels, but still enough to make that picture taken at 100 ISO look good enough. But when I zoom to the pixel level, then it looks ugly. Even at 100 ISO, some pictures turn out okay, but others look ugly. And when I turn off the lens correction, the vignetting correction, I take down the sharpening to 0, then it looks getting much closer to the 5D Classics image, but still the texture is not good enough. And when I'm taking my photos with the 5D Classic, I take the shot, and here I didn't edit the colors, didn't do any tinkering. That's how it came out from the camera. I just did a RAW to JPEG conversion, and that set it as my desktop on the screen, and that's what you are seeing now. And when I take a comparable picture with my mirrorless camera, with the M50, I have to play around a lot with the settings, with the contrast, saturation, color level, whatever, color temperature, gamma, whatnot, to get them look similar to this, but even that there's not as good 3D pop. It looks crushed. And that's where the 5D Classic has tremendous advantage. If you have a non-moving subject that you can focus on properly, you have plenty of light, then it will give you a picture that you don't have to post-process the hell out of it, and it will look just staggeringly resembling what you took the picture of. So what I noticed, what is the difference between the 5D Classics images versus any other camera's images that are modern mirrorlesses that I have used, is that the 5D Classic images have the memory of the texture in them. So when I look at that, I can almost feel how it is to touch that. And like the touch feeling on the screen feels the same as looking at the object. Or when I took picture of my cats, and then looking at the picture of the cat on the photo, I can kind of see that when I look at the cat, look at the monitor, that both of them are made of fur. Or I took a picture of the carpet, and the carpet on the screen, I can tell that it's the same like cotton polyester material mix. That on the screen I can tell what material the fabric was made of when I take a picture of the fabric. And when I take a picture with a mirrorless, there might be more resolution in it, I can zoom in it more, I see more sharpness in it, but I cannot tell what material that fabric was. So there's these extra layers of information that are captured on a 5D sensor, and that is not voodoo. That's because it has higher signal to noise ratio per pixel than modern mirrorlesses do, and than modern sensors do. So I think that that's my little story for today, is that now there seems to be a cult developing around the 5D Classic, and it's not something random. It's not people hallucinating, or it's a fad, they are ignoring reality. No, there is hard reality under that, and there's the numbers, the sensors data that show us that yes, this is very firmly rooted in reality. It has a sensor that has superior signal to noise ratio to some of the best modern high-end sensors today. And so So that's it. But it's going to be best in the working range where that camera was designed at that era, because that's what it was designed for, to take similar pictures that we took with a film camera. Nowadays, the cameras are designed for a very different purpose, and the purpose is that you give it to the hands of an idiot, the person takes a shot, and then it's all messed up. You have to crop it, you have to change the colors, you have to adjust the working range, the dynamic range, you have to lift the shadows, crush the highlight, and yeah, then you can do tremendous flexibility with that. And it doesn't only help the idiots who don't know how to set the camera to take a shot of a certain subject, but it's also, if you are a professional, it gives you a lot of freedom to edit your picture. And just because, even though you might be a professional, but it's just so random. It takes a lot of luck to take a perfect shot. It's almost impossible, especially in bright sunlight areas like here in Hawaii. We have lots of clouds, and each second the exposure dramatically changes second by second. So even if you set it correctly, between the time of setting it correctly and pressing the shutter, it won't be correct anymore. So that's when you will need the advantage of the freedom that the extended dynamic range of a modern sensor gives you. But if you don't need that, and you are comfy just taking a shot, and you are happy with most of the shots, then you will be extremely happy with the 5D Classic, because it will give you tremendous amount of information. I know it's now more than 30 minutes, but I want to add one more thing, and that one more thing is the difference. It's just not the sensor that makes the image that you capture, it's also the lens. And that's where the Leicas will have tremendous advantage compared to your 5D Classic, because most people who buy the 5D Classic, they have the cheap Canon lenses with it. For example, the Nifty 50. And the Nifty 50, the sharpness of those images and the focus accuracy is a joke. It's not good at all. It makes the images look kind of fuzzy, and yeah, you can take wonderful pictures with the Nifty 50. I've taken lots of wonderful photos with it, but the quality of those pictures will be a very, very far cry from anything that you can take with any of the Leica lenses. However, when you go for the higher end Canon lenses, especially if you go to the L series, the transformation will be vast compared to the low end Canon lenses. You will have a tremendously better color balance, tremendously better focus, because my problem with the Nifty 50 was that the focus was never perfect. Usually it caught the focus, but it was just nearly good enough. So, and I thought it's the cameras doing not as good, but it wasn't. It's the lens. The Nifty 50 cannot focus precisely. The L series lenses of Canon focus way, way, way better, and the picture I've taken off was with my Sigma Art. The Sigma Art series lens, the f1.4 35mm, and it's a beast. It focuses extremely well. So wherever I'm focusing on, so the focus dot falls on, razor sharp every time, even in lower light areas. So when I am indoors and what is low light for a 5D Classic is when you are indoors in your home with your lamp on. That's the low light for a 5D Classic without a flash. With this lens, the f1.4 Sigma Art lens is perfectly capable of taking beautifully focusing shots in when you only have a single light in your home. And of course it can even take beautiful shots when I have just a lamp, not even a big headlight over you, just a single night lamp shining light over a subject, this lens focuses beautifully and takes wonderful shot. When I have the same situation, that single night lamp shining light at something with the nifty 50, it will, I suffered to get the focus. It won't focus right. And even when it makes the focus, like I'm trying to focus, take a shot of the cat, it will never ever focus on the eye of the cat. Something will be, the face will be out of focus in 99 photos out of 100. And with the Sigma art, it will nail the focus of the eyes of the cat every single time. So that's what you want if you want to bring up the experience level of the 5D Classic and make it truly comparable to the Leica experience, is to use a Sigma art level lens, and then the pictures will be just very sharp, very contrasty, but not artificial like they would appear when you use a modern mirrorless camera with an extremely high resolution lens, and there you just, I think I'm seeing some artifacts when zooming into the pixel level. Of course, if you don't zoom to the pixel level, you are just viewing it as a 2 to 4 megapixel resolution image, then those will be quite nice as well. So that's it for today. Thank you for being here, and if you are still listening, you are amazing and you won the prize of patience. And enjoy taking your photographs, and please share your comments. What have you experienced? If you have experienced using a classic sensor camera like the 5D Classic, or even the 5D Mark II is pretty close to it, or any of the crop sensor brothers like the 20D, 30D, 40D. Have an amazing day. Bye bye.